So in this video, we're going to focus on layers. Layers you can see or you can find in the top left by default. This is the window we're looking at. And yeah, well, as you can see, it's like a model or like a structure of all the properties that we have within our Moldflow project, or especially this study that I just selected here. And within those layers, we have different sections. One is called the default layer. This is usually where the injection point goes into. I can select and deselect this. Below that, we can find our CAD geometry. So by deactivating the triangles, you can now see that all of the CAD data is stored within this block and it's automatically being created. In the next one, we have the geometry area. That's where curves and also the mold block is being stored. And then in the next one, we have all the elements, which consist of the beam elements of our cooling system, but also our part elements. And the next one or last one is the mesh nodes. In this case, this is only the part nodes, but usually also the mold block nodes are being stored here. So when we look at the layers, we can also create our own layers within already existing folders by clicking into the folder and then selecting new layer. Or I can also click in the layer on top, create a new folder, and within that new folder, I can create more layers. What I can also do is I can delete layers by clicking on the X button. I can change the display of layers, which I will go further into in a minute. And I can also assign properties to layers. So by clicking, for example, clicking on one element, I can now assign this into a completely different layer. And that's basically the way how we structure properties within Moldflow from one layer to another. Also, I can use the expand layer. By clicking on this, I can choose by how many levels I want to expand the layers surrounding this triangle that I just selected. This can help with some selection processes or modeling processes. And the last one is clean layer. By clicking this, it will automatically delete all the layers and folders that I have just created, because they did not contain any properties, as I did not assign any properties to them earlier. So that's basically the main structure of layers. Now taking a look at the layers more closely, for example, where the injection locations are, that's probably not the best example, but let's look at the mesh elements and more precisely our part elements. I will just right click on this layer of my mouse cover and I say hide all other layers. By doing this, only my tetras, only my triangles of the part are being shown. So as you can see, it looks quite smooth at the moment. This moment I can do another right click and change the display of each of my layers. And by doing that, we now have some different options. First of all, I can, if there's multiple entities inside one layer, I can select the entity. In this case, there's only triangle elements. In the next step, I can change the color, either go with the default, the very famous Moldflow green, or I go with a specific color and choose a color that I prefer. And then what I can do is change the visualization. So in this case, it's the default, but I can also change it to solid. Solid is actually the default. I can also select solid plus element edges. By doing this, I can now also see all of the element edges of my triangles. Or I can also choose transparent or transparent plus element edges, which helps me to see through the part itself. This can especially help with some beam elements. If I have a needle within my hot runner, for example, I can select transparent plus element edges, and I can look through the needle or look through the runner itself, and I can see whether I modeled it correctly or not. So that's basically the main display features that we use quite often. One more thing, you can always see that there is one layer that's highlighted. This is also called the highlighted layer. And this is the one, once I have this activated and I create some new elements, for example, within geometry, some nodes, curves, or beams, all of those nodes, beams, and curves are being stored within the highlighted layer. And to make another layer active, I can just click on a different layer, say right click, make active, and that's how this layer will now be activated. So everything I create now is being stored in this layer. So please note also we cannot delete active layers, that's just a rule. And yeah, that's basically it. That's probably most you need to know about layers.